being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. The recording of the meeting will remain online for 4 years, and if you are present in the chamber, you are consenting to appearing in the recording and broadcast, which may also be used for training purposes. Anyone else recording or filming from within the room must not obstruct the view of the councillors, officers, the press and public, and that flash photography must not be used unless it has been agreed beforehand. We have received apologies from Councillor Pullen, with Councillor James attending as a substitute. Welcome, Councillor James. Are there any other apologies that people know of? No. Okay. Are there any declarations of interest? No. On the agenda, item 3, minutes of the previous meeting, are members happy to approve as correct record the minutes of the meeting held on Monday, the 14th of July?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's been chicken and eggs, that's a good start.
Okay. We have not received any public questions for this meeting, and we have not received any petitions or deputations. So we go on to item number 6. On the first substitute agenda item, this is a report from the Cabinet Member for Resources updating us on the Treasury management activities. Please could I ask our Accountancy Manager, Richard, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. This report, as Victoria said, is our annual Treasury Management report. So it's very similar to the other quarterly reports that we receive. SIPA ask us to, they recommend that we produce quarterly reports, but they require us to produce biannually reports, two reports a year. Yeah, that's biannual. Yeah, reports. This is one of the reports that we're required to produce. It details through, in the report, details our investments and our borrowing and showing how close we are to our operational and authorised boundary. As you can see near the back of the report, we're below both of these, which is a good sign for us. It also details out our maturity structure of our external debt. One thing of note that we've been asked to include in this report is our average weighted return for the investments over the year. We were asked as well to benchmark these, but when we spoke to our advisors, they told us it wouldn't be appropriate for us to benchmark our return because we are a relatively small authority when it comes to investments. Because of our capital programme, etc., we're a borrowing authority most of the time, so we haven't benchmarked those returns. But I can assure you they're the best returns we can get within our remit set by SIPFA. We ask Audit and Governance to note this report before it goes to Council. Do you have any questions?
No, don't.
Councillor Burkett.
Thank you, Chair. Short-term borrowing, you mentioned that just now. Nearly 45% of the borrowing matures within 12 months. So what's our contingency if the short-term rates spike or, there's liquidity tightening or something?
Yeah. Thank you. So we actually had a meeting with our advisors 2 weeks ago. So the reason we have so much short-term borrowing is because they are the best rates. So if we were looked to borrow 50-year money from PWLB, we would still be, that's Public Works Loan Board, so it's borrowing from the government. We'd still be looking at paying 6% to 6.5%, which is a lot more than what we're paying for short-term cash. Obviously, it does create a liquidity risk. So when we go to that loan matures and we have to refinance it, there's obviously a risk that there's not money in the market. Most of these short-term loans are from other local authorities, but to mitigate that risk, if we ever did get into a situation where we couldn't replace a loan, we can always borrow money for a year or however long from the Public Works Loan Board.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Are members happy with the resolution to recommend to Council that the contents of the report be noted?
Yep.
Okay. That report is noted and will be considered by Council next Thursday. Next on the agenda, we have the Risk Management Annual Report 2024 to 25. This is one of Piesh's reports. Over to you, Piesh.
So thank you, Chair, and good evening to you and to the committee. So I'm Piyush Patania, the head of ARA, and I'm joined this evening by Spencer Williams, who is our principal auditor and lead auditor for Gloucester City Council. So on page 31, you have the annual risk management report, and the overall sort of purpose of this report is to provide the committee with assurance that the council's risk management processes are sound, that they are reviewed, they are monitored, they are up to date. It also then feeds into a number of reports. So, for example, it feeds into the annual governance statement, it feeds into my annual report as well. And risk management is a key part of the council's overall corporate governance, Chair, part of the corporate governance framework and internal control environment. So section 1 of the report, it identifies the benefits of risk management and in helping the council to achieve its objectives. Section 2 describes the risk management framework, and some of the key responsibilities regarding that. Section 3 details the link between risk management and the Code of Corporate Governance, as well as the annual governance statement. And as I mentioned, these help me with my overall opinion in my annual report. In section 4, we take you through the 3 lines of defence model and what the individual sort of responsibilities are around that. In section 5, I have to apologise, there is a typo because it says the Council's Risk Management Policy Statement and Strategy 2020-23. That has been updated, so it is current, as I say, apologies for that. Critically on page, or for information on page 36, we have a graph which profiles the sort of movement in the profile of the risks of the council over a number of years, and it's pleasing to see that the number of high and very high risks as a proportion of all of the council's risks is lower now than it has been over the last 4 years. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Any questions for Piesh? Councillor Lewis?
Yeah, I just want to make, on that graph you just mentioned at the end, in 2021-22, the high and very high are exactly the same. But the very low is actually better. So on the whole, it's actually better now than it was 2 or 3 years ago. So I just wanted to point that out for everybody, that it's being well run and it's being well documented and it's great. Well done.
Councillor Vierholt?
Thank you, Chair. While risks often look at negative things, do we also look at potential benefits in our risk management?
You're absolutely right, because on the opposite side of the coin for risk is opportunity, and I think that is something that we do look at, but not as much as we could. That is an area I think that we need to develop further. But you're absolutely right that is, as you say, the opposite side of the coin. We need to develop that further, Chair.
Any other questions? Are members content to note and endorse the report?
Yeah.
Okay. That report has been noted and approved. The next item on the agenda is another report from Piesh, providing the committee with a summary of the draft risk-based internal audit plan for 2025 to 26.
Thank you, Chair, again. So as previously mentioned to the committee, we have moved away from having annual internal audit plans. We now have 2 six-monthly plans. And so you've had the first one, and we have now added to that quarters 3 and quarters 4. So Spencer has been doing a lot of work in reassessing the risks that were initially analysed a few months ago, just to make sure that those are still pertinent, that those are the right risks to be looking at, that they're at this, are they at the same level? Are there any new risks? Have some risks come down? So he has also been speaking with heads of service and management across the council, and he has refreshed the plan. And the reason we take this approach is it's better to do it that way. It means that the internal audit plan is sort of more current, if you like. It's not based on risks that we assessed months and months ago. We're taking account of risks as they are now. And so you now have the full year's internal audit plan here. Happy to take questions.
Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Burkett?
Thank you, Chair. The key audits and timing, I'm just looking at the table on page 66. And towards the bottom, items 21 and 22, conflict of interest officers and treasury management. So what are the scopes and quarters? What management outcomes will define, to give examples that will define success for that? Yeah, I'm just trying to get a sense of what's the scope of those risks in the strategic risk register. What management outcomes will define.
There we go. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, the scope that you see there is a very high-level scope at the moment. The detailed scope will be determined nearer the time when Spencer has had an opportunity to discuss with management around that. So conflicts of interest would typically involve the monitoring officer, most definitely. So we have an idea, a sense of what this audit is about, but the actual detail, what the work programme will include, will be determined nearer the time.
Yeah, I just want to, I mean, obviously the cyber attack was a major pain, to say the least, and it's still obviously very high. Can you ever see that actually coming down, ever? Because I mean, there's a lot of human error in it and whatever.
Cybersecurity? I don't think so. I think it's one of those risks that it's high and you've just got to accept it, I think. When you look, I'm talking generally, I'm not talking about the council. If you look at cyber, if you look at the kind of organisations, both in the public sector and in the private sector, that have had issues with it, it seems to me that they do say in risk management that it's a question of when, not if, which sounds terribly dramatic, but that is what I have heard. And so you could spend the council's entire budget on cybersecurity, and so yeah, it will be a high risk, and I think it'll be high for everyone, everywhere, all the time.
The only other one I was querying, which is still very high, is licensing. Have we not come to grips with that? And because we've got people out there who are struggling to get their taxi license and this, that, and the other, because it doesn't seem to be. There seems to be a roadblock somewhere along the line, and I don't quite know what it is. But have you got any sense of when that could be improved?
I think the tricky thing about licensing is that it's quite broad. It covers so many different types of licenses. So you might get it right in one area, and then you find another area that you need to improve on. So I think it's good to keep it under review, as we do, Chair, and hopefully after this audit, you will find that in the areas that are mentioned here in this plan, you will see the risks in those coming down.
Any other questions for Piers from this?
Yeah, I'd just like to mention that. I thought it was quite good, actually, the spot check they do now and then. I got caught out yesterday when they send a thing out to actually, check that that you've got all the, knowledge for dealing with fishing and that. And I'm afraid I got caught out, so I did the test, and I won in the end.
Do we know which councillors have actually done all the cyber training now? I know I have, it took me hours. Because obviously that.
I don't have that information, Chair. So.
I know one or two of them, but there we go.
Are members content to approve and agree that the draft internal audit plan reflects the risk profile of the council? That report is agreed and approved. On to agenda number 9, the Global Internal Audit Standard Update. Over to you, Piyush, to introduce.
Thank you, Chair. So earlier this year, I brought a paper to this committee just to give you a brief heads up, as it were, that there would be new internal audit standards for us to follow, which are the Global Internal Audit Standards, which replaced the previous standards, and those came into effect on the 1st of April. What I also committed to doing is to bring a more detailed paper to this committee to inform members of the requirements of the new standards. And the reason is, of course, is that this committee plays such an important role in its oversight of governance, risk management, and the work of internal audit. And so it's very important that this committee knows what the requirements of the new standards are. And again, you can hold us to account against those. The other thing is that informing the committee is part of the requirement. So I have to inform you to say I've done it and I've met that requirement. So I'm happy to take any questions on that.
Andrew?
Just a more of a statement on table 1, the essential conditions contained within the code. It's compliance all across the board, except the last one, partial, which is better than no. So I would just like to congratulate you. You're hitting your targets and doing everything we're supposed to. And that gives us, as a council and councillors, a bit of confidence about that the job's been done properly. Just well done. Well done.
Does anyone else have any questions for this?
I have.
Councillor Burkett.
Thank you, Chair. The readiness for adopting this new standard, is there a training timeline for the committee?
All right. No, we haven't provided any of our committees with sort of detailed training on this, but I'm more than happy to, if that's something that it's just that the standards are quite long, is what I'm trying to say. And so I'm more than happy. I can email them to you. There's 126 pages of goodness there in small type. If you really would like to see them, so more than happy to do that. More than happy to talk you through it if you feel, I don't know, maybe an hour just to go through the various. So, you have the essential conditions here. I'm more than happy to do that.
Maybe get a copy, just so that I can peruse. Be cool.
I wouldn't mind a copy if you could summarise to 5 pages. Okay. Are members happy to note the information on the new standards of internal audit?
Yeah.
That report is noted. The next report on the agenda is the Internal Audit Activity Progress Report 2025 to 26, which informs the committee of the activity progress of the Internal Audit Service in relation to the Internal Audit Plan 2025 to 26. Please could I remind members that should anyone wish to discuss any aspect of Annex 1 or 2, we will need to consider resolving to exclude the press and public before doing so, as this may contain exempt information. Yes, do you have an introduction?
Thank you, Chair. So this is your regular report on our progress against the plan, which at the moment, in view of what I've said, is against quarters 1 and 2, obviously. There are a couple of items, as you've mentioned, Chair, that we have finalised and reported on, and for obvious reasons, one of those items is exempt because it's in regard to the council's IT and cyber. You also have the recommendation monitoring report on page 86, which I think I've mentioned previously. We started reporting on this last year because that was when we started. We hadn't done it previously. There was quite a large number of recommendations that they just hadn't been looked at and reported on. What we've noticed, as I expected, and what our experience has been with other partner councils, is that over time those start to come down. So they are coming down. There are a couple that maybe are just lingering a little bit, but we are working with the Section 151 officer as well, and I know Spencer does have regular conversations with heads of service and so on. And so we expect those numbers to come down and to stay low going forwards. There is also a counter-fraud team update and including an update on the National Fraud Initiative. So happy to take any questions, Chair.
Councillor Widerholm.
Thank you, Chair. I think you've just answered the question that I was going to ask you, and I think it's the same question I asked last year, was what are we doing about the open recommendations that are a number of years old? But you've addressed that, because what you've said, if I paraphrase, is that we weren't monitoring those previously. We are now monitoring them, and over time they will be resolved. Just noting that there's one on health and safety, which could, if I don't know what the recommendation is, but if there's something on health and safety that could impact on anyone, we ought to have that recommendation resolved rather promptly. Thank you.
Yeah, on that particular recommendation, that has been followed up and we are on top of it. We're just waiting for the evidence to be sent to us. But by the time the papers were prepared, we hadn't received the evidence. As far as I'm aware, we have received that evidence now. That's gone to the auditor. So long as that backs that up, then we should be able to close that recommendation.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, as far as I know, that one's been cleared, and the licensing ones as well, I think, have been cleared as well. So we're working through the rest of them.
Thank you for that information. Any other questions for Pierre? Councillor James.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, and it might be for Declan, to be honest with you, is one of the recommendations for licensing the DBS checks for Hackney carriages?
Yes, it is actually. I think there was a question about that. Oh no, I think it's on this report. Yes, that is one of the recommendations. By the time the report was written, they were testing it. So, and I think that's gone through okay. So I would expect to see that one cleared by the time of our next meeting.
Any more questions? No? Okay. Are members happy to note the report and accept the progress? Okay, that report is noted. The final substantive report on the agenda was not on the initial agenda front sheet, but it's an urgent item that I requested in light of the recent update of the financial outturn position 2023 to 24. This is an unaudited statement of accounts of 23 to 24 and is a report to the Cabinet Member for Resources. Adrian, do you have an introduction?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. taking this report. I'd like to start actually by principally thanking the finance team, especially Lizzie and Rich, for their extreme hard work and efforts over the past 18 months, if not more. Just before I present that, just to say that thank you. It's taken us a long time to get to this position, but we are pleased to now be in a position of having a set of 23-24 financial statements to present to the council, to the committee here, and we published them on Monday to the public for public scrutiny under the 6 week, I think it's 6 weeks period of review there. In terms of the accounts, as you fully well know, it's been a long haul especially on the 23-24, because we had to put in after the cyber incident we had to put in all the manual information, or 11 months worth of the transactions were manual. We were still putting those back into the system in May 2024. That meant there was a lot of reconciliation work went on subsequent to that. In terms of the accounts, they are prepared in accordance with the CIPFA Code of Practice, accounting practice. It follows most of the normal accounting standards with certain variations, and has several other reports in there that you don't get in as a normal set of accounts. The key items are basically what you'd expect in a normal, a standard set of accounts that a company or other organisation prepares. You have a comprehensive income and expenditure statement, which covers your income and expenditure in the year in accordance with accounting standards. It has two sections to it. The surplus, in terms of how it's presented for the council, it has the surplus or deficit on the provision of services, which ties in with the actual outturn for the council in terms of management accounts. It also includes a host of things which come through in terms of valuations and fair values of assets and fair values of the pension scheme feed through in the bottom section of that. Those generally create reserves, which we call unusable reserves, i.e., because they're valued at a basis at a point in time, they're not real money until such things are realised. So it is trying to show the true value of the council's assets, but actually that moves over time. Anybody that owns shares or anything, or even invests in banks, will realise things change. The movement in the reserves is captured in a specific statement for the called movement in reserves. I've already alluded to the unusable side of things. There's two elements of reserves. There's usable, which is the funds that we have available to spend sitting there, or that we can quickly access in terms of cash that we can use to provide services with. And there's the unusable, which there are a series of regulations and accounting regulations around which we can't, but they do have value if we should decide to realise one of the assets that are linked to. One of which we can't realise, the pension scheme. I'll just give that one. The balance sheet captures the picture of, at a certain point in time, the picture at the 31st of March 2024 of the assets and liabilities of the council. It's important to say that because things move on. The balance sheet changes day by day. It's one of those items that just captures what's the position at that point in time. So it will show what cash, what debtors we've got at that point in time. It will show what creditors and liabilities we've got at that point in time. The cash flow statement is an accounting statement that tries to capture that movement of the cash that's cash and cash equivalents that are held by the council, to show whether we've spent more cash, whether we've made cash in the year or spent more cash than we've had come in. It ties together and is a reconciling statement, really. The unusual statement in the council's accounts is something called the expenditure and funding analysis. that ties in to show how the amounts income and expenditure links to the different services of the council, and it has a series of slightly different rules to the comprehensive income and expenditure account. That's an overview of different statements in there. The disappointing aspect, having gone through all the work and as we've done all the reconciliations, as we've tidied up all that data that was put in, is that we ended up with a position that was worse than forecast in July last year. July 24. Things have, as we've gone through and worked through the numbers in accordance with the accounting standards, and as we've identified things that were out of sync or duplicated, which wasn't very many in terms of duplication, but things that were in the wrong periods or in the wrong place, we've identified that the position was not as good as we'd hoped or as we'd forecast. But we're now at a position where we've got the set of accounts published. It's marked as unaudited because we are expecting an audit of the audit. I will reference, I am slightly disappointed that we haven't got a representative of the new auditors, Ernst & Young, in the room, which means that I once again have to explain what they will be doing. In terms of the audit of this set of accounts, I would call it's more of a review. They will do what they call the value for money audit, which is the review of the internal controls, and should hopefully marry up with the statements you received from internal audit and have heard earlier. It also reviews the internal controls over the putting together of the statements as well. So it covers all those aspects. They will be doing that. They've started asking questions on that. They're reviewing various. They're doing a high level review of the accounts, and then they will be providing a disclaimer, as we had for the 22-23. Apologies, I have to keep thinking which year we're in for those accounts. So it was similar to what we saw in January. That's just a consequence of the delays and the position we're at, and the impact of the cyber incident, and the government legislation, government regulations that have said that they want to expedite to get everybody back up to speed. So hopefully at the next audit committee meeting, we will see the external auditors. They will explain their plan and what work they have done and where they're at. This process, so that will take us to the conclusion of the process in relation to 23-24 accounts. And off the back of that, we have already started work on the 24-25 accounts to try and get ourselves totally back on track after several years of a real struggle with the way that the data was. So I'll apologise for the fact that it's taken us so long to get to this point, but it wasn't due to anybody not pulling the stops out to try and get it over the line. If you've got any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Yes, Councillor Lewis.
I would just like to put on record my thanks. Hopefully this committee's thanks for all the hard work you've done since the cyber incident, because it was an absolute dog's dinner. And it was not anybody's fault. Nobody should take the blame or have the blame put on them. It was just circumstances. And we are now where we are, and your team and everybody else here is doing a fantastic job to get us to where we should be. You know, it wasn't just in Gloucester City, it was national. There was auditing problems and whatever. It was just a perfect storm, should we say. And I just want to say, I know how hard you have worked within your team to actually get it to the bottom of it and to come out the other side. Not as we would have wanted, but that's the way these things go. So just thank you very much for all your hard work, and if you could pass that on to the people in your...
I think I need to thank the officers for their hard work in sorting all this out, and also the cabinet member as well, who's actually been working very hard with the officers. But any other comments I have about the past and about why the accounts weren't audited before, I'll reserve for full council.
Any other questions? Councillor Wiederholm.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe a little bit too much detail here, but on page 76, the pension assets and liabilities, there's a statement that says the council's pension liability changed during 23-24 by 25, I assume those are millions, from a liability to an asset. Yet the columns show a larger liability at the end of 23-24. I'm confused by that.
I have to admit, the whole of the finance team is confused by that. It is a very strange accounting regulation, because we moved from basically a pension deficit, a pension fund deficit of 2.6 million to an asset of, I can't remember the number, but a very big number in millions. So yeah, that's right. But but in essence, there is a part of the pensions accounting standard which refers to asset ceilings, and you have to then. So if once you move from a deficit to a surplus, you then have to introduce an asset ceiling. We went and got a actuarial report on that, what that asset ceiling should be, and yeah, I'm not going to even try and explain it, but it ended up that we had to put in a liability of 30 odd million, which then switched us back into a liability position. I still haven't got to the bottom of how that accounting standard is intended to make the accounts look sensible. So it's one of those valuation issues, and it's also one of those reasons why there is the distinction between usable and unusable reserves, because, yeah, you've just highlighted how random some of those movements can be. So apologies. If I do come up with a better answer to you, I will send you it in writing.
Thank you. I suppose we should remember that Duckworth and Lewis were actuaries, and nobody understands how cricket scores are worked out. So we'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Any other questions from members?
Can I just say something else? Just to follow on to what I said before, I think it's not just the people in this room now, but it's also the people beforehand who dealt with some rubbish, should we put it that way. And so it's not just, you know, I agree Declan's done a great job or whatever, but he is an accountant, so he should do. All right, you're retired, but that's besides the point. But the people before, like Hannah Norman and whatever, they really did get to grips with it in an awful situation. But it's, you know, forget about the politics or whatever, but I just want to really praise the officers who are coming through a rump dog's dinner of a situation. And like I said, I don't think there's anybody to blame or whatever. It's just a perfect storm which hit the fan, as they say.
Councillor James, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've got a rookie question, as it's my first audit and governance meeting. All these tables, when it says like 14,276, I take it that is then thousands, as in?
All the tables are in the core statements.
Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at page 18, the outturn causes general fund performance table. There are arrears increases there. So what's the recovery trajectory for things like council tax and business rates for 2025 and into next year? Page 18. Page 18. Page 18 of the PDF, which is page 10. Yeah, my mistake.
Sorry, that was me trying to find the right page. So the table shows how the outturn moved, or was. We'd originally predicted an outturn of 288,000. It ended up being 722. And the question was around the trajectory of that coming back. We are the officers of the council and the senior management of the council are taking action to actually bring the actual numbers back and build the reserves back up. Some of that will hopefully come through in this current financial year, but the work is being undertaken to do that. We have to keep in the black, and we have to create a balanced position. So we are, as was mentioned in a report that went to Cabinet last night, that actions are being taken to actually work to get us back on track. That's as much as I can comment at the moment.
Thanks, Adrian.
Does anyone else have any questions? No? Lovely. Okay. Are members happy to note the unaudited statements of accounts 23 to 24? Yes. That report is noted. The next thing on the agenda is to consider the work programme. And you can see, next thing is, there only is one thing really, is the internal audit activity progress report. Adrian, you said.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that there should be on that work programme, we should expect to see an audit plan from the external auditors, and we should be able to possibly, I'm not going to, because we haven't got a timing for their work, as in a finalised timing of their work on the 23-24, but we'd expect to be close to having some sort of report on what they found in that review, because they are meant to be undertaking it before we get to Christmas, should we say? Yeah, because we need to move on to the next set, so I would put them on there. Yeah.
Pierre, did you want to say something?
Chair, just to say that also we're hoping for November that the annual governance statement will be coming to that meeting as well.
Richard's looking at me. There will also be a quarterly treasury coming to that.
2 quarters.
2 quarters. Oh.
I'll put it in one report.
Can we note that Ernest & Young will be present at the next meeting? Yes.
We should hope. Yeah. And did you catch? We will note. And did you catch that we will also need to add 2 quarters treasury reports to that meeting as well? Yeah. Okay. So it's got a bit busier.
And also, are we hoping that the report on Hampstead Meadows might be, yes?
I'm looking at Spencer. I think we're on track. That is our intention to have it for that meeting. Yes.
Does any other member have anything to add to? So the next item on the agenda is the date of the next meeting. The date of the next Audit and Governance committee meeting is to be Monday, the 10th of November 25. Can I just say thank you for everyone for the flexibility of changing to a Thursday evening this month so that we could attend the online session. Thank you for coming to this evening, and the meeting is now closed.